Hello and welcome to my workshop. So I decided I'm going to take a couple random bits I have laying around and turn that into a trailer. Alright, so let's get started. I'm not sure what it is about trailers, but I really like making them. I guess it has to do with being simple to make and quick while still having all the aspects of a regular build. I also enjoy making trailers from stuff I have laying around. This Jeep body, which was damaged during shipping, has donated its front and rear in both making trailers. The first step is to set the width by choosing the proper width 1/14 scale semi-truck axle. These axles can be picked up cheap on eBay and come in a variety of widths. Just screw on some leaf springs and you're ready to go. I needed to cut off the center section of the Jeep along with removing the rear seat and cargo area. The seat was removed in a way that it can be reused one day. I have a bin of these types of pieces just for that purpose. Most of the material is removed with a thin kerf hobby saw, but I also use cutters and a rotary tool for those hard to reach places. With the bulk of the material removed, I go about figuring out the height for the floor. The floor is just a simple rectangular 60,000 sheet styrene that has a slight contour in the front to match up with the body. Before I can attach the floor though, I need to clean up the sides a bit. These are not even due to the body contours and mounting posts. It's simple to do this by just adding a piece down both sides that gets glued into place. I was thinking about using some existing wheel wells I had already made from a vacuum forming process, but decided a new set was required. The ones I had would have worked, but new ones would just look much better. Making these wheel wells is pretty simple. Just carpet tape 2 pieces of MDF together and sand matching curves after roughing out the shape on the bandsaw. When these 2 pieces are separated and cleaned up, a vacuum form can be made for a perfectly fit inner wheel well. After cutting out an opening for the wheel wells, the sides were glued to the floor in preparation to inserting it into the body. I wasn't sure how much would stick out the front, so I just let all the pieces run long. The wheel wells get solvent glued into place, and the inside gets backed with CA glue. This structure then gets inserted into the body for the final glue up. I was holding off on this since I still wasn't certain about the wheels and tires I wanted to use. The trickiest part of these builds is setting the right height. You need to match it up with your truck so the trailer sits mostly level. These hobby-grade brass shapes are perfect for these trailers. They come in a variety of shapes, and I try to keep several of each on hand. When I can, I use the thicker wall tubing for the strength. If you have an area that needs a little more strength, they can be nested together. Here I have inserted stainless steel capillary tubing into the brass to keep it from bending on longer straight runs. I drill holes to mount up the leaf springs to 2 sticks of brass tube. Once I get the dimensions correct, pieces are cut to connect the 2 from side to side. These are silver soldered in place using Safety Seal 45 and a MAP gas torch. You can see where a smaller tube was nested up inside the larger one to extend the piece to the correct length. With the leaf spring shackles mounted directly through the tube, a portion of the shackle sticks up and over the chassis. I couldn't just mount the chassis directly to the body, since this would cause binding issues. To solve this, thin strips were glued to the body where the chassis meets up to give that little extra clearance that's required. I wasn't overly worried about seeing the mounting screws in the bed, since I planned on filling it with scale overlanding equipment. If you were concerned, thicker pieces of styrene could have been used for the risers, and screws could have been used to bite directly into the thicker pieces so they don't protrude up into the bed. For me, I just used through screws with lock nuts in the bottom. As mentioned, the front was just left long. Now that I have a good idea for the chassis, I can start to see the shape. I pick a length and cut off the excess. To cap it off, I simply added a flat piece of styrene. When the corners are sanded back and the seams filled, it will look great. Since the body has a slight curve, I had to bend a piece for the patch panel on the side. The inner structure is a piece that gets glued up before gluing in the curved section. These will need to be built up with a little bit of glaze filler, but the basic structure is there. I went with a really simple design for the tongue on this trailer. The brass tubing was pie cut so that the end of the chassis can form a triangle. This was then soldered to a long piece of tubing which extends forward as well as under the body. In order to strengthen the joint and add an area for mounting items, flat pieces of brass were soldered in place. I haven't always added shocks to trailers, mostly due to not having much room under there. These 1/14 tractor trailer shocks are short enough to fit underneath most trailers. Here I am making a simple mount that connects the shock to the axle. The piece is made by cutting down an angle aluminum piece. A rotary tool is used to clearance out the piece to wrap around the axle tube. Once the leaf spring screws secured in place, the shock can be added. The top of the shock is just bolted straight to the chassis. With the main structure complete, I can focus on fixing a few details in the body. This is accomplished by grinding away the fuel tank, license plate holder, and a few other pieces that were cut a little rough. Filler made of styrene and CA glue were used to patch them over in preparation for sanding back. As much as you try, it is hard to get these patch panels perfectly smooth with the surface. For this, I mix up some 2-part glaze and sand smooth after it hardens a few minutes later. I really like using this since it gives an amazing finish and it dries in about 15 minutes. Successive grits of sandpaper were used to shape the panels. This is followed up with filler primer and more sanding. I try to go to at least a 400 grit wet sanding before applying any color. It didn't really need it structurally, but I like the look of this diamond plate on the tongue. It's from RC 4-wheel drive and is real aluminum. It's thin enough to cut with scissors and just looks amazing. I figured there wouldn't be any stress on these pieces, so they were just CA glued in place. I've gotten in the habit of building with regular non-lock nuts. This allows me to easily tear the pieces apart. This taking apart and putting back together is a huge part of scratch building, so having the process sped up a bit really helps. The other benefit is I can keep using these nuts over and over again, where a nylon lock nut, it will wear out. Here I am going piece by piece, replacing screws and nuts with ones that I will keep on the trailer for good. The last thing to do with the trailer is to add on some accessories. I'm using this coupler from Pushrod 3D. These were designed to fit on the axial trailer hitch. I also make a simple mount with some brass square tubing and a wire management piece from Axial Kit. This holds the jack securely but allows it to be slid out easily from the side. Since this is going to be an overlanding trailer, I needed boxes to hold all my gear. The green box was a stocking stuffer for my wife, and the black boxes were just purchased on Amazon. Both actually function, believe it or not. The green box holds a small snatch block setup I made a few years back. Just throw a few tow ropes in the back and it's complete. I'm sure I will add more over time, but this is a good start. These trailer builds are so much fun. I can knock them out in a few days and end up with something that's a blast to use on the trail. Maybe one of these days we'll have a truck and trailer comp. But until then, I'll see you on the rocks.